Yeah, we in Teso we have been moving around, pushing for reforms, given the current realities on the ground. You have seen what has happened, and this is what we discussed yesterday in Ekuwe. We have just discussed in Ekuwe in the region, in the district-based consultation on the reforms. So one of the key issues we are saying is that even the current realities, you have even seen what has happened with the passing of the Anti-Homosexuality Act bill, which is now law in the country. The threat by donors to suspend funding and many other things. The likely sanctions that are going. This now a reality in our hand. I think this now matches with what we have agreed in Ekuwe here yesterday. And it has been something running across Teso that I think it is time for the government to redefine itself and accept that it's time for us to reform our country. We can no longer afford to spend as if we are a superpower. You can't afford to spend money in a manner that generates problems. We can't sustain it with the likelihood of sanctions. I think it is time for us to cut the size of parliament. You have witnessed what the people in Ekuwe are saying. We must cut the size of parliament. We must cut the size of cabinet. We must cut the size of government. We must restructure government into regional blocks, regional governments, so that we redeem the money and we begin to run ourselves in a manner we can. So to me, that is the clarion call. It's a wake-up call for government to take up reforms proposals seriously. Because as a country, I don't think government can afford to run in a luxurious money. For instance, how do you budget to buy a president clothes of 1 million per day? How do you put aside and say you are going to give a speaker 1.5 billion donations? How can we afford to have a huge expenditure on state house financing? So this is the time for us to reform our government, to reform the structure of our government and our country. This is the time for us to redefine the size of parliament so that we cut and redeem resources that can now be used that can be channeled to improve service delivery. To me, that is a critical moment now, and that is what the people of Ekuwe have actually decided, given the realities that we are now facing. It is still time. We can redeem ourselves. We don't need to reach the level of Greece. You remember what happened with Greece? The state collapsed, institutions collapsed, and by the time they woke up, they were forced to take up austerity measures. Let me tell you, by the time a government goes to borrow from a money lender in the streets in Nairobi to run itself, then you already know we are in bad shape. It is time for reforms now than before. We can redeem ourselves. It all just needs discipline. It also needs government to swallow its pride. The government of President Museveni needs to swallow its pride, accept the current realities, cut down the size of government, cut down the size of parliament, redeem the resources, and channel them to the right track. Our neighbors, Tanzania, have exactly done that. Magufuli simply cut down the size of state. You just look at how can a tiny economy in East Africa have 560 MPs, close to 60, if you put together with the ex-officials, a myriad of ministers who now earn through parliament. Tanzania has a smaller parliament. Kenya is 290 MPs. Which is it? Ours is double Kenya. And then the economy of Kenya is 4 times Uganda's. So I think what is critical now, it is not too late for government to wake up. This is a wake-up call. You never know what will happen if they slap sanctions against us and get us in a current mess. It is better to reform than wait to collapse like Greece, which actually got crippled out of debt and could not even move a step until it now ended up reforming under the mercy of the international community. So it is not too late. This is the time. And I think that's why our push for reforms is going on. And we are happy with the Minister of Justice and Constitutional Affairs, who assured us on the 15th of March this year that the government is moving into reform, and I hope it will take in the current realities of what is happening, that we can no longer sustain a huge government. We can no longer sustain commercialized politics. We can no longer sustain militarized systems. We can no longer sustain a government that budgets and facilitates its president to the tune we are doing today. It is time to reorganize the state. It is time to address critical questions in this country so that Uganda shapes itself in a manner that is sustainable, governs with the minimum external influence. So it is not too late. This is the time. If government ignores this message, it will be forced. It will be forced to reform, but with big embarrassment and shame, like it happened to Greece.